Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 52 units of real estate. So today I'm 34 years old, almost 35 years old. And this is some advice that I wish my 20-year-old self would know. So if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, please listen to this. But, obviously you can benefit the most if you're younger. So the first piece of advice that I would give my 20-year-old self is don't care what other people think about you. So in my 20s, and even before that, middle school, high school, early college, I always cared about other people's opinion of me. And I think that's just normal as you go through puberty, in that age. It makes you like hyper aware, hyper self-conscious, and you care about other people's opinion of you, right? Like you care how you dress, how your hair looks, how you talk, how you behave, how you act, right? And this is why I remember in high school, at least when I was growing up, like everyone kind of dressed similarly because no one wanted to stick out and no one would be made fun of because we're all like super self-conscious, super aware. So I remember like in high school, in the, was that 2004, 2008 for me? You have all the goth kids just all dressing the same and no one sticks out. You kind of have like the nerds, kind of have like the more jocks and athletes, kind of that typical outlook. And no one wanted to stick out. So it was kind of like a herd mentality in a weird way. Because you didn't want to stick out, because you don't want to be made fun of, and you won't feel self-conscious, right? So, for me, I always kind of thought that way. But, as I've aged now and, have more wisdom in life, I've learned that most people are too busy thinking about themselves to even care about what you look like or what you are, right? Like, that's most of the case. Like, even to this day, like, if I change my clothes, get a haircut, people don't even notice. Even if it's like a drastic haircut, like people don't notice for like a few days, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, like nice haircut, if they say anything at all, right? Because they're just so focused on their life, their self, their own thoughts, that they don't really pay attention to you, right? It's like once you kind of know that, it's a little bit freeing in a sense, because why do I need to care what they think when they're just thinking about themselves, focus on themselves? And like I said, most people that do put you down, they are just projecting their own insecurities, their own, low insecurities, low self-esteem onto you, right? That's why they put down others, because it makes them feel better. So knowing that, thinking back, the people who did make fun of others in high school or back then, they were just covering up their own insecurities, right? And I was probably a victim to that too, where I felt empowered by putting down others to make myself feel better, but in reality, I had low self-esteem, right? So it's like a loop. so yeah, it's kind of a weird mindset shift that I've had since aging. So now I don't really care what people think, as long as I'm not doing anything bad, hurting other people, and all that. Like I'm just myself, right? This is just how I am, and for me, I'm pretty unfiltered. As you can tell, I'm very transparent, and I've always been this way, and will continue to be this way, because like I said, as long as I'm not doing bad stuff, hurting people, spreading negativity in the world, and I'm like overall net positive or neutral to the world, that's good enough for me, right? So just be yourself. It's kind of the main thing. And as you age, you realize that people don't, like you said, people don't really care about what you've done, what you've gone through. Some people will, but most don't, right? So that's just the way it is. And like even me, like I put myself on social media. And obviously, like when you put yourself out there, there's a lot of positive. You might have 75% positive comments, but there's gonna be 20%, 25% negative comments. And they say that one negative comment wipes out like 8 positive comments. So and then that's the risk you're taking, right? But the people who put down others, they're not willing to put themselves out there because they're afraid to get criticized and all that. Right? Like they're afraid to get criticized, so they'd rather criticize others before they get criticized themselves. So, that's why I try to approach those who criticize others with some sort of empathy. Because, and what mental state do you have to be in that you go online, you see some random person on YouTube, and then you have to put negative, hurtful comments, right? Like I would never want that lifestyle, and I'd be completely miserable if that was my lifestyle. So I do have sort of empathy with it. And, obviously if there's someone like that in person, at work, at home, then I limit my exposure around them, because, I don't need that in my life, right? It doesn't do you any good. Stresses contagious. Negativity is contagious. So like for me, I try to stay away from those like toxic people, personally. So that's kind of one thing. So kind of the moral of this rant was people don't really look at you as much as you think they do, right? Like that's one thing. The second trait I would tell my 20-year-old self is like, not everyone's gonna like you, right? And obviously I learned this going through life and going to management. So like I remember like the moment you're like a regular pharmacist, everyone liked me, right? I remember when I was a regular pharmacist, most people liked me. There's always those that hate you regardless, right? And just knowing that like no matter what you do, what you say, who you are, there's just be those people who just hate you. Like it doesn't matter what you do, right? They just hate you regardless, right? And knowing that, it's kind of freeing in a sense, because like I just hang out with people that I like to hang around, and the ones that hate me, then I just limit it or yeah, avoid it if possible, right? Still be professional, but I don't need to like have beers with you after work or joke around with you. Just say what needs to be said to get the work done, and then you move on, right? Like you're not gonna be friends with everybody, but like specifically, like there's people that they love you when you're like a regular pharmacist, but once you step up into management, all of a sudden they hate you now just because you have a title. You're the same person. Like literally, let's say yesterday I was a pharmacist. Today, one day later, I'm a pharmacy manager. Now when you step up to be a pharmacy manager, there's just people who just hate you just because you're in management. Like the moment you have the management title, they hate you automatically, right? So and the hard thing too is like people who step up into management positions that are like people pleasers and want people to like them. It's a hard transition because now people are just gonna hate you just for being a manager, right? Because you're a higher title and you're a higher power, and all of a sudden the expectations of you is increased significantly, right? As it should, but like all of a sudden like you have to know everything. You can't make excuses. You can't use incompetence as an excuse like regular staff do. Like regular staff will be like, oh well, I was never trained, and it's like a very simple task. I'm like, well, so but when you're in management, you can't be like, oh, I was never trained, right? They just expect you to know. So like I said, once again, those people that hate people who are in management, they can't do that position, right? Because it's a different role, different skill set. And like like for me, I have 200 staff, and a lot of people complain and like to whine, right? And then you just hear that all day, right? And then some people can't deal with that, right? Especially the people who whine and complain, ironically, they're the ones who cannot deal with stress at all, right? But they're like putting all their stress, all their negativity onto managers, right? So we become like emotional punching bags, right, for the staff. And I guess that's the part of the role, right? That's part of the role when you step into management, director, leadership positions, is you're taking that emotional stress burden of people, right? Because people have emotions. There's a joke where like you spend 20% of your time with 80% of your time, 20% of the staff that like to complain the most, right? So, that's why if I ever have a business, I want those who don't complain but problem solve, right? Just don't complain, just problem solve, make life easier for everybody. But when you work in W2, large enough environment, you have 20%, 30% complainers, right? Where they just complain, they don't give solutions. So that's kind of another thing is like, yeah, you're not everyone's gonna like you, and be okay with that. Like if you look at to be a president, like if 51% of the people like you and 49% of the people hate you, you're president, which is like the highest position in the U.S., right? So like that's just the way it is, right? Like I said, I don't expect people to like me, and like even as you become wealthier, as you become more successful, people hate you, right? Like there's friends that maybe used to like me, and then once you become wealthier, you make more money in your W2, you own some real estate, you own some assets, now they start to hate you, right? Because it makes them feel bad seeing your success. So, just be okay with like not everyone's gonna like you, and not everyone needs to like you, right? If they don't like you, then just avoid being around them. It's plain and simple. Another thing that I learned as I've aged and would benefit from hearing as a 20-year-old is, success takes time and success takes patience, right? Like, it's hard when you're 20 to say, hey, it takes like 5 years to like make something good happen. Because for you at 20, 5 years is like literally 25% of your life, right? It's like 25% of your life. So, it's hard to tell a 25-year-old or a 20-year-old or 18-year-old, like, hey, wait 5 years. Because for them, it's a lifetime, right? But versus when you're like 50, 5 years is like 10% of your life, right? So it's not as intimidating, not as crazy. So, but all good things take time. Like the first 5 years of me buying real estate, I didn't really see much gain. But now when it's year 6, year 7, year 8, up to year 10, this is where the compounding starts to happen. When you start investing in like index funds, the first 5 years, you don't see much growth. But after that, that's when you start to see compounding. When you develop a new skill, like when I became a pharmacist, it took me 5 years to get comfortable as being a pharmacist. And then, maybe 7 years to be comfortable being a pharmacy leader and manager, director. But then now it gets easier and easier over time, right? So everything good takes a long time. Social media, I anticipate social media to take me 5 years to get really good at social media, right? If I slowly improve over time. So have patience with that, right? And then to tie in with that is another lesson is slow, steady improvement every single day, right? So like I'm not gonna go from, like, let's say I was like 300 pounds. I'm not gonna go from 300 pounds to 200 pounds in like a year, or maybe could, or like 6 months. But could I lose a pound every week and maybe lose 50 pounds a year? Yeah, that sounds more doable, right? Or whatever cadence. So like, same with like wealth building. Like, yeah, it might sound intimidating to be like, oh, I can't save $1,000 a month. But could you save like $30 a day? Right? It sounds less intimidating, right? Like, okay, what's $30? That's literally, at least in California now, it's like one cocktail, right? Or like one eating out one time, right? You are using Uber Eats one time, right? So if you break things down to small incremental gain, it compounds over time, right? Like if you slowly just work out every single day, and slowly increase your weights, if you slowly learn every day, if you slowly do a practice every day, it compounds over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then you are the asset that compounds, right? So focus on your education, focus on your mindset, right? Like, like you are the asset that you can't lose. So like that's why there's a lot of people where they lose all their wealth. And as long as you learn from why you lost your wealth, you still have the knowledge to rebuild that wealth back up, right? So like for me, if I lost all my real estate, I still have the knowledge, right? If I lost all my YouTube channel or whatever, I still have the knowledge of how I got there. So you are the asset that compounds over time. So focus on optimizing you as the asset, right? Focus on yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. Try to learn every day. Try to improve every day. Like, how do you optimize your diet? That's how you optimize your sleep. That's what I've been really focusing on. And I didn't know that in my 20s, right? I didn't know about proper sleep. I didn't know about proper nutrition. I didn't know about like mindset, stress reduction, all this stuff. Like I've been honing in on this in my 30s, right? So yeah, that's really kind of what it is. It's just optimize yourself so that you are the compounding asset over time. And you are the thing that will improve over time, over time, over time. So that's another key message. Another thing I would tell my 20-year-old self is to hold yourself accountable. Like, don't blame other people for your problems, for your failures, for anything. And I used to do that a lot when in my 20s, is I would just try to blame other things, circumstances for my failures, because I just couldn't take responsibility back then, right? And there's still a lot of people that do this to this day, and they're older, right? I'm sure you see it everywhere, like in your workplace, and your friends, your family, they just don't take any accountability, right? And then, but for me, I take extreme accountability of everything. If I make a mistake, even though I don't think it's my fault, like, how can I have contributed to this to prevent it from happening again, right? And then as you take accountability, you raise your standard, you learn more, you're constantly pushing yourself, right? Because I've seen people, like, they take zero accountability and they have not improved at all for like a long time. Like, there's people who got fired, got laid off. I've been fired, I've been laid off, and they haven't taken any accountability for that, right? Like, they're just like, oh, it's not my fault. It was, the manager's fault. It was the circumstances' fault. And they just deflect the blame, right? But if they just point the finger at themselves, then like me, like, even though I got fired, yeah, even though I think, I got, it wasn't my fault, but yeah, I mean, obviously there's something that I contribute to that, right? And how can I improve, right, next time, right? Like, I learned a lot from getting fired, so that I would know what to do to avoid that situation from happening again. I've been laid off twice, and I know what to do to avoid that situation again. So, like, for getting fired, like, obviously, what I took out of it was, take better notes, right? When you study, take better notes. And you have to really push yourself and, do the best you can, communicate, without maybe calling out your boss, right? And so there's a lot of things that I learned, a lot of nuggets I took out of getting fired, right? Even though it may or may not be my fault, right? But whatever, it happened, and I took ownership of it, and I learned from it, right? And same with getting laid off. Like, okay, now I know, okay, avoid hospitals that are small, not doing well financially. And then, but even if you go to a big hospital, like, just know that, like, when you get laid off, sometimes it's a crapshoot, right? They just throw darts at a board, and the dart hits your face, then you're gone, right? So, like, don't take it personally, and then move on. So after that experience, I diversified my income, right? That's why I have real estate. I have index funds. I now do YouTube and coaching, right? Because I know that I want multiple streams of income. In case I get fired or laid off again, I still have income. I'll still stay afloat. That's why I'm developing other skill sets, right? Of creating content, of coaching, of real estate. So if I lose my pharmacist job, which is my main income right now, I still have other sources of income. I can still stay afloat, right? And that's why I have emergency reserve as well, and index funds, which are liquid. So, you have to learn from these things and prevent it from happening again, right? As you get older and as you compound over time. So, that's another thing. Another thing I would say is as you go older, your circle of friends start to grow smaller. So I remember like in high school, middle school, even college, you have a large circle of friends, acquaintances, go out, have fun. But as you get older and as you become more successful, you start to lose friends, right? Like friends that, maybe they get jealous of you. Maybe they just are very competitive. Maybe they're hyper judgmental. Like we all have friends like that, right? But for me, as I've gotten older, I weed out my friends where like I want the ones who are like really just care about me, right? They just don't compare themselves to me. They just care how I'm doing. They want to have a good time. Want to see me do well, want to see me succeed, want to help teach me. Your friends are going to change, and friends come in for different seasons of life, right? Like during one season it may make sense to have this friend, and a different season it may not, right? And I've gone through it too, right? Even some of my close friends where there's a period where I was so focused on real estate that I didn't have as much time to spend with my friends, and then now that real estate's more stabilized, I'm reconnecting with friends, right? So it's just in different ways, different cycles. So that's another thing that I wish I knew in my 20s. So anyways, hopefully you found some nuggets from this video. Hopefully you can apply a lot of these nuggets to your life, whether you're 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I'm sure this is all applicable to you. Let me know if you have any comments or questions below. If you want to learn how to buy multifamily real estate with some guidance, mentorship, or want coaching, check out the link down below. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.